Ever wondered how the Amish keep pulling in massive harvests? No matter if it's spring, summer, or winter, their secret isn't chemicals or tech, it's a set of time-tested habits that work across the entire growing cycle. These 25 simple tricks don't just help once, they build a garden that produces year after year, season after season, with less effort and more reward. Healthy soil first. The shovel hit something hard just 3 inches down, and the frustrated gardener knew exactly what it meant. Years of walking on wet soil had created a layer so compacted that even weeds struggled to break through. But across the fence, an Amish garden showed rows of thriving vegetables in what looked like the same type of ground. The difference wasn't in the soil itself, it was in how that soil had been treated over decades by Amish farmers who understood soil health. Every spring, these traditional Amish farmers start their season not with planting, but with a simple soil test that costs nothing but reveals everything. They mix a handful of dirt with water in a clear jar, watching how it settles and checking the color against knowledge passed down through Amish generations. Too much clay, and they know to add coarse compost. Too much sand, and they'll work in fine organic matter that holds moisture without creating mud. Some gardeners buy so many soil amendments from the store, their credit card thinks they're opening a landscaping business, while Amish farmers create perfect soil from garbage. The real magic happens in the compost piles that dot these Amish farmyards like small mountains of potential. Kitchen scraps, fallen leaves, and barn waste transform over months into black gold that crumbles like chocolate cake in your hands. While others spend hundreds of dollars on bagged amendments, these Amish gardens thrive on waste that would otherwise fill landfills. The result is soil so alive with earthworms and beneficial bacteria that plants seem to grow themselves, developing the deep root systems and natural disease resistance that come from truly healthy ground. Why seed choice matters. The old mason jar sat on the kitchen windowsill in an Amish home, filled with dried beans that looked unremarkable to most visitors. But these seeds carry genetic memories stretching back over a century. Memories of drought years when shallow-rooted plants died while deep-rooted survivors thrived. Memories of pest outbreaks that killed weak plants while resistant ones flourished in Amish gardens. Each harvest season brings a careful selection process that seed companies can't replicate in their sterile facilities. The Amish farmer chooses the tomato plant that produced fruit even during the wettest summer to save its seeds. The bean vine that climbed highest and produced the most pods becomes next year's parent stock in the Amish seed collection. The corn stalks that stood tall during windstorms while others fell over earned their place in the Amish seed jar. These seeds have more staying power than most modern relationships. They actually improve with each generation instead of losing interest after the first season. This natural selection process creates varieties perfectly adapted to local conditions in ways that laboratory breeding never could. Seeds saved from plants that thrived in specific soil types, weather patterns, and pest pressures carry genetic instructions for success in those exact conditions. When commercial varieties fail during unusual weather or succumb to local pest problems, these Amish heirloom seeds often continue producing as if nothing happened. The difference lies not in genetic modification or hybrid vigor, but in generations of plants that earned their survival through performance rather than marketing promises in Amish farming systems. Saving rain the smart way. The first drops of rain sent most gardeners running for cover, but in Amish communities, those same drops represented liquid gold falling from the sky. Simple gutters and downspouts directed every drop from roof surfaces into waiting barrels, capturing hundreds of gallons from even modest rainstorms. While neighbors paid monthly water bills that climbed with each thirsty summer, these Amish families had learned to harvest their irrigation from above. The difference in plant response was immediately obvious to anyone who compared the two water sources in Amish versus conventional gardens. Chlorinated city water often left white residues on leaves and gradually built up salts in the soil that interfered with nutrient uptake. Rainwater, naturally soft and slightly acidic, soaked into the ground without leaving chemical traces in Amish growing areas. Plants watered with collected rain showed deeper green foliage and more vigorous growth than those receiving treated municipal water. The storage systems themselves cost almost nothing to build, but provided water security that expensive irrigation systems couldn't match. Old food-grade barrels elevated on simple platforms created enough height to fill watering cans using gravity alone in Amish rain collection systems. During drought periods when water restrictions limited garden watering, these Amish families continued harvesting abundant vegetables from beds irrigated with water they had collected for free during the last storm. The sight of lush Amish gardens thriving while others withered nearby demonstrated the wisdom of working with natural cycles rather than depending entirely on municipal systems. Making every inch count. The small Amish garden plot looked impossibly crowded to visitors, yet somehow produced enough vegetables to feed a family of 8 throughout the growing season. Every square foot had been planned like a chess game by Amish gardeners, with tall plants providing shade for heat-sensitive crops below and nitrogen-fixing beans climbing up poles next to heavy-feeding corn stalks. What appeared chaotic was actually a carefully orchestrated Amish system, where each plant contributed to the success of its neighbors. Vertical growing techniques transformed the mathematics of food production in ways that surprised even experienced gardeners visiting Amish farms. Bean plants that might spread across 20 square feet of ground instead climbed 8-foot poles, producing the same harvest while occupying just 4 square feet at ground level. Cucumber vines wound up trellises made from salvaged materials, hanging their fruits in midair where they developed better color and avoided soil-borne diseases. Growing vegetables vertically is like running an apartment building for plants. Everyone gets their own space, the landlord triples the rent from the same lot size, and nobody complains about the neighbors upstairs dropping things. The pathways between Amish garden beds stayed narrow enough that a person could barely walk without brushing against plants on both sides. Commercial operations waste nearly half their space on machinery access, but hand-tended Amish gardens could dedicate every possible inch to actual food production. Even tiny backyard plots began feeding families when managed with this Amish intensity, proving that space limitations were often just excuses for poor planning. Careful garden planning. The kitchen table disappeared under hand-drawn maps every January in Amish households, covered with sketches that looked like military battle plans. Each bed was outlined with precise measurements, crop rotation schedules stretching 5 years into the future, and planting dates calculated from local frost records kept in Amish family journals. These weren't casual weekend gardeners hoping for the best. These were Amish food producers planning for success with the same attention to detail that businesses use for million-dollar projects. The rotation schedules revealed botanical relationships that most gardeners never consider, but Amish farmers have perfected over generations. Heavy feeders like corn and tomatoes followed nitrogen-fixing legumes that had spent the previous season enriching the soil in Amish crop rotation systems. Root crops loosened compacted earth before leafy greens that needed easy root penetration. Disease-prone plants moved to different areas each year in Amish gardens, breaking cycles that could devastate crops grown in the same location repeatedly. Some Amish families still consulted lunar calendars when finalizing their planting schedules, timing seed starting and transplanting to coincide with specific moon phases. While modern agriculture dismisses these practices as superstition, many traditional Amish timing methods align surprisingly well with optimal soil temperature and moisture conditions. The combination of scientific knowledge and generational Amish wisdom created planting schedules that maximize success rates while minimizing the kind of crop failures that could threaten food security for families depending on their gardens. What chickens do best. The chickens scratched through the Amish garden area like feathered rototillers, their sharp claws breaking up compacted soil while their keen eyes searched for grubs, beetle larvae, and other pests that would later damage crops. These birds weren't just producing eggs in Amish farming systems. They were providing soil preparation, pest control, and fertilizer production all in one efficient package that required no fuel, made no noise, and worked for the cost of grain and kitchen scraps. Fresh chicken manure steamed in Amish compost piles, too concentrated to apply directly, but perfect for creating slow-release fertilizer that wouldn't burn plant roots. After proper aging and mixing with carbon-rich materials, these droppings became garden gold that commercial fertilizer companies tried to replicate in their expensive organic blends. The nutrient balance was perfect for vegetable production in Amish gardens, providing nitrogen for leafy growth, phosphorus for root development, and potassium for fruit production. Chickens are basically the original farm employees. They work for peanuts, literally eat their problems instead of complaining about them, and their retirement plan involves contributing to Sunday dinner. The integration of chickens into Amish garden systems created cycles that fed back on themselves in beneficial ways. Birds ate crop residues and volunteer plants that might harbor pests or diseases, cleaning Amish garden areas while adding their droppings directly to soil. Their constant movement and scratching incorporated organic matter more thoroughly than many mechanical tools, creating the kind of soil structure that allowed water and air to penetrate easily. The fresh eggs became bonus income from workers who more than earned their keep through their contributions to Amish garden productivity. No weeds allowed. The hoe blade sliced through the soil just below the surface in Amish gardens, severing weed stems with surgical precision while leaving crop roots undisturbed. This daily ritual took place in Amish growing areas where weeds never seemed to gain a foothold, not because of chemical sprays or expensive mulches, but because of timing and technique that Amish farmers had perfected to prevent problems before they started. Small weeds died with a single slice, but established weeds required digging and often came back stronger than before. The timing made all the difference between easy maintenance and backbreaking labor in Amish weed management. Weeds pulled when they were still seedlings came out of moist soil with their entire root systems intact. The same weeds allowed to grow for another week developed taproots that broke off when pulled, ensuring regrowth within days. Amish gardens weeded every 2 or 3 days stayed virtually weed-free with minimal effort, while neglected gardens required hours of difficult work to restore. Mulching served as the first line of defense in Amish growing systems, creating barriers that prevented weed seeds from germinating in the first place. Layers of straw, grass clippings, or shredded leaves blocked sunlight while conserving soil moisture and gradually decomposing to feed the soil. The investment in mulching time during spring planting eliminated most weeding work throughout the growing season in Amish gardens, proving that an ounce of prevention really was worth a pound of cure when it came to weed management. Natural bug control. The aphids that had been devastating the bean plants suddenly disappeared overnight in an Amish garden, leaving behind only empty shells stuck to leaf surfaces. No pesticide sprayer had visited the garden. No chemical residues contaminated the soil, yet the pest problem had resolved itself as completely as if an invisible army had swept through during the night. The secret lay in understanding that Amish gardens were ecosystems where problems often contained their own solutions. Crushed eggshells scattered around vulnerable plants created barriers that soft-bodied pests couldn't cross without damaging themselves in Amish pest control systems. Wood ash served double duty, deterring slugs while adding potassium to soil as it gradually washed in with rain. Trap crops like nasturtiums acted as pest magnets in Amish gardens, concentrating aphids and other insects where they could be easily controlled without affecting main vegetable crops. These natural pest control methods work like a good neighborhood watch program. They use local knowledge to keep trouble away, don't require expensive equipment, and everybody benefits when someone else does their part. Homemade sprays mixed from kitchen ingredients provided targeted control when problems did develop in Amish growing areas. Garlic and soap solutions disrupted insect feeding patterns without harming beneficial predators that kept pest populations in check. The key was early intervention and regular monitoring, catching problems when they were still manageable rather than waiting until infestations required desperate measures. This Amish approach required more observation than chemical solutions, but it preserved the beneficial insects and soil organisms that contributed to long-term garden health. Using mulch the right way. The soil under the thick layer of straw felt cool and moist even during the hottest days of summer in Amish gardens, while unmulched areas just feet away had baked into concrete hard surfaces that shed water like pavement. This dramatic difference in soil conditions translated directly into plant performance, with mulched vegetables in Amish growing areas showing deeper green foliage and continued production even when their neighbors wilted under heat stress. Different materials served different purposes in this organic covering system that Amish farmers had perfected over generations. Straw worked perfectly around heat-loving crops like tomatoes and peppers, reflecting light upward while allowing air circulation. shredded leaves packed more densely, making them ideal for suppressing weeds around perennial crops that needed long-term protection in Amish garden systems. Grass clippings decompose quickly, providing fast nutrition for heavy feeders that needed regular feeding throughout the growing season. The water conservation benefits became obvious during dry spells when neighbors ran sprinklers daily while mulched Amish gardens thrived on weekly deep watering. Mulch acted like a sponge, absorbing irrigation water and releasing it slowly to plant roots instead of allowing it to evaporate or run off. Over time, decomposing mulch materials added organic matter to soil in Amish gardens, creating the kind of rich, crumbly texture that plant roots could easily penetrate and that held nutrients like a natural slow-release fertilizer system. Growing tomatoes, the Amish way. The tomato seedling disappeared into the planting hole until only the top few sets of leaves remained visible above ground level in the Amish garden. To most gardeners, this looked like a mistake that would surely kill the plant, but traditional Amish growers knew that buried stems would develop additional root systems that could support heavy fruit loads throughout the season. This deep planting technique created anchor systems strong enough to prevent mature plants from toppling under their own weight. Lower leaves that touched the ground got removed with sharp, clean cuts that healed quickly without creating entry points for diseases in Amish tomato growing systems. This pruning served multiple purposes beyond disease prevention. Better air circulation reduced humidity around plant bases, and energy that would have gone into maintaining lower foliage got redirected into fruit production and upper canopy development. Growing tomatoes the traditional way is like raising teenagers. You give them deep roots, remove the troublesome lower influences, and provide strong support systems so they don't fall over when they get heavy with responsibility. Support systems built from wooden stakes and cloth strips adjusted as plants grew in Amish gardens, unlike rigid wire cages that often proved too small for vigorous varieties. Suckers, shoots that develop between main stems and branches, got pinched out regularly to concentrate plant energy into fewer, larger fruits while improving air movement through the canopy. These time-tested Amish techniques produced reliable harvests without expensive inputs or complicated systems that often failed when weather conditions challenged plant health. Early morning gardening. The garden lay quiet in the pre-dawn darkness on Amish farms, with dew heavy on every leaf and the air still cool from the night's temperatures. By the time most people were drinking their first cup of coffee, experienced Amish gardeners had already completed their watering, weeding, and inspection routines for the day. This timing wasn't just about avoiding heat, it was about working when plants were most receptive to care and when problems were easiest to spot and solve. Water applied in early morning had time to soak deeply into soil before heat and wind increased evaporation rates in Amish gardens. Plants absorbed moisture through their roots and leaves while they were still cool and unstressed, unlike afternoon watering that often evaporated before reaching root zones. Wet foliage dried naturally as temperatures rose, preventing the extended humidity that encouraged fungal diseases to develop and spread in Amish growing systems. Morning light revealed details that harsh afternoon sun obscured or distorted in Amish garden inspections. Wilting plants showed their stress clearly before heat made every plant look droopy. Fresh insect damage appeared obvious on undamaged foliage, and unusual sounds that might indicate pest problems carried clearly through calm air. These diagnostic garden walks caught developing issues when simple interventions could prevent serious problems, proving that timing was often more important than technique when it came to successful Amish plant care. Simple climbing supports. The bean teepees rose from the Amish garden like miniature log cabins, built from branches that had fallen during winter storms and would otherwise have been burned or hauled away. These improvised structures cost nothing to build, but provided climbing space for crops that would otherwise sprawl across valuable ground area in Amish growing systems. The natural materials weathered gradually, often lasting several seasons before needing replacement with fresh salvaged materials. Pea vines wound their tendrils around brush that had been pushed into soil with the small twigs still attached in Amish gardens, creating climbing surfaces that plants could grab easily. Old fence posts became sturdy supports for heavy crops like winter squash that needed strong frameworks to support mature fruits hanging several feet above ground level. Wire mesh stretched between solid anchors provided climbing surfaces for lighter crops like cucumbers and beans in Amish vertical growing systems. Building garden supports from scrap materials is like decorating with found objects. Everything looks a little rough around the edges, but it gets the job done for about the same cost as a decent cup of coffee, and you feel clever for not paying retail prices. Vertical growing improved plant health in ways that surprised many gardeners who were used to ground-level production but became standard practice in Amish farming. Air circulation around elevated foliage dried dew and rain quickly, reducing disease pressure that often plagued plants growing close to soil level. Fruits hanging in open air developed better color from improved light exposure and stayed cleaner than those resting on ground. Harvesting became easier when vegetables hung at eye level rather than hiding under low-growing leaves, and the increased production from the same ground area often doubled or tripled yields from Amish vertical garden spaces. Harvesting at the right time. The zucchini hiding under broad leaves had grown from finger size to baseball bat proportions in just 3 days, transforming from tender vegetable into tough, seedy disappointment. This common scenario played out in gardens where harvesting schedules lagged behind plant production, but experienced Amish growers had learned to check their plots daily during peak season to catch vegetables at optimal maturity. Frequent picking encouraged continued production from plants that might otherwise shift their energy into seed development in Amish harvest management systems. Bean plants that were harvested every other day kept producing new pods for weeks longer than those allowed to develop mature seeds. Tomato plants picked regularly channeled their energy into new fruit development rather than ripening existing fruits to full maturity where they attracted insects and developed tough skins. Storage quality depended heavily on harvest timing and immediate handling after picking in Amish food preservation systems. Vegetables harvested during cool morning hours and processed quickly maintained better texture and nutritional content than those left to wilt in afternoon heat. Root crops actually improved in flavor after light frost exposure, developing the sweet, complex tastes that made them prized for winter storage in Amish root cellars. Understanding these timing principles helped Amish gardeners maximize both quantity and quality from their growing efforts while extending the useful life of harvested produce through proper post-harvest handling. Low-tech tilling. The horse-drawn cultivator moves slowly through the Amish field, its shallow tines stirring only the top few inches of soil while leaving deeper layers undisturbed. This gentle approach preserved the complex soil ecosystem that industrial tillage often destroyed, protecting earthworms, beneficial fungi, and soil organisms that contributed to plant health through processes that chemical fertilizers couldn't replicate in Amish farming systems. Timing of cultivation made the difference between helpful soil management and destructive soil compaction in Amish agricultural practices. Working soil when moisture levels were optimal created the fine, crumbly texture that seeds needed for good germination. Tilling wet soil created clods that dried into concrete-hard chunks, while working overly dry soil created dust that blew away with the first strong wind. Using horses for fieldwork is like having a tractor that runs on hay instead of diesel, never needs an oil change, and produces its own replacement parts, though the exhaust emissions definitely take a more organic approach to soil improvement. No-till methods were used wherever possible in Amish farming, with cover crops and heavy mulching maintaining soil health without mechanical intervention. This biological approach built soil organic matter over time while reducing labor and equipment costs to essentially zero. The absence of fuel consumption, mechanical noise, and soil compaction from heavy machinery created growing environments where soil life could flourish in Amish gardens, supporting plant growth through biological processes rather than requiring constant inputs of synthetic fertilizers and chemical amendments. Keeping pests away naturally. The scarecrow standing guard over the Amish corn patch had been upgraded with aluminum pie plates that spun in the breeze and strips of fabric that fluttered with every air movement. These simple additions to the traditional stuffed figure created motion and reflective flashes that confused birds and small mammals, making them think twice about investigating what might be available for easy meals in Amish gardens. Homemade repellent sprays mixed from kitchen ingredients provided targeted deterrent effects without toxic residues that could harm beneficial wildlife in Amish pest management systems. Vinegar solutions created taste barriers that most animals avoided, while garlic and hot pepper sprays deterred both insects and larger pests through scent and mild irritation. These treatments cost pennies compared to commercial repellents and could be customized for specific pest problems in Amish growing areas. Crop rotation confused returning pests that expected to find familiar food sources in remembered locations within Amish farming systems. Many insects and small mammals developed location-specific feeding patterns based on previous successful foraging. So moving crops disrupted these established routines and forced animals to search elsewhere for their preferred foods. Physical barriers like lightweight row covers provided protection during vulnerable plant stages without permanent installations that interfered with garden maintenance, creating multiple layers of pest pressure that no single strategy could achieve alone in Amish integrated pest management. Planting garlic for protection. The pungent aroma that rose from crushed garlic cloves was pleasant to most people, but apparently offensive to aphids, spider mites, and several other common garden pests in Amish growing systems. Planted strategically around vegetable beds or interspersed among susceptible crops, garlic served as a living pest repellent system that required no maintenance once established and actually improved with age as bulbs grew larger and more potent in Amish gardens. Fresh garlic processed into liquid spray provided antifungal treatments that controlled powdery mildew, black spot, and other diseases without synthetic chemicals in Amish plant health management. Regular applications during humid weather prevented disease outbreaks that might otherwise require more drastic interventions, and the natural compounds broke down quickly without building up toxic residues in soil or on plant surfaces. Garlic is basically the neighborhood security guard of the garden world. It keeps troublemakers away just by being there, never takes a day off, and everybody knows better than to start problems when it's around. Growing garlic was straightforward enough for beginning gardeners, but rewarding for experienced Amish growers who appreciated crops that required minimal care while providing maximum benefit. Individual cloves planted in fall developed into full bulbs by midsummer, storing for 6 to 8 months in cool, dry conditions in Amish root cellars. The same strong flavor compounds that made garlic valuable in Amish cooking provided its pest control properties, creating multiple benefits from a single crop that earned its space in any garden through both culinary and protective contributions. Turning kitchen waste into gold. The compost pile steamed gently in the morning air on Amish farms, evidence of the biological processes that were transforming yesterday's kitchen scraps into next season's garden fertility. Eggshells added calcium that would prevent blossom and rot in tomatoes. Coffee grounds contributed nitrogen and slight acidity that blueberries craved, and vegetable trimmings provided the carbon and nutrients that soil organisms needed to thrive and multiply in Amish composting systems. Wood ash from the heating stove got added sparingly to Amish compost piles, providing potassium that was especially valuable for root crop development and fruit production. The key was moderation. Too much ash could create overly alkaline conditions, but small amounts balanced acidity while adding essential nutrients that plants needed for strong growth and good yields in Amish gardens. Proper layering techniques created conditions for rapid decomposition while preventing odors and pest problems that plagued poorly managed compost systems in Amish waste management practices. Carbon-rich materials like dried leaves and straw alternated with nitrogen-rich kitchen scraps and grass clippings, creating the chemical balance that composting bacteria needed to work efficiently. Regular turning introduced oxygen that kept the process aerobic, preventing the anaerobic conditions that created unpleasant smells and attracted unwanted scavengers to what should have been beneficial soil building operations in Amish farmyards. Helping bees help you. The wildflower patches scattered throughout the Amish vegetable garden looked decorative to casual observers, but they served essential functions in supporting the pollinator populations that made abundant harvests possible. Native flowers required no maintenance once established, but provided nectar sources throughout the growing season in Amish pollinator management systems, supporting different bee species with varying flight ranges and flower preferences that commercial crops couldn't satisfy alone. Chemical-free growing practices ensured that beneficial insects encountered no toxic residues on flowers or foliage in Amish gardens. allowing natural predator-prey relationships to develop without interference from synthetic pesticides. These biological control systems often work more effectively than any single intervention, maintaining pest populations at manageable levels through complex interactions that chemical approaches disrupted or destroyed entirely. Bees operate like the ultimate freelance workforce. They show up on time, do excellent work without supervision, never ask for benefits or vacation time, and their only payment requirements involve flowers and maybe some sugar water during economic downturns. Fruit and vegetable yields increased dramatically when adequate pollination occurred naturally through healthy bee populations in Amish farming systems. Squash, cucumbers, melons, and fruit trees all depended on insect pollination for productive harvests, while even self-pollinating crops like tomatoes benefited from bee activity that improved fruit set and development. Creating bee-friendly garden environments paid immediate dividends in increased production while supporting broader ecological health that extended far beyond individual Amish garden boundaries. Extending the season. The cold frame built from salvaged windows trapped solar energy during short winter days, creating a microclimate warm enough to grow fresh lettuce and spinach while snow covered the ground outside. These simple structures cost almost nothing to build, but extended productive growing seasons by weeks on both ends, providing fresh vegetables when grocery store prices peaked and selection was most limited. Cool season crops like kale, carrots, and Brussels sprouts actually developed better flavor after exposure to light frosts, concentrating sugars that made them sweeter and more complex than the same varieties grown during warm weather. Row covers made from lightweight fabric provided several degrees of frost protection while allowing light and moisture to reach plants, extending harvests well into what most gardeners considered the dormant season. Strategic planting schedules took advantage of natural seasonal patterns rather than fighting against inevitable weather changes. Late summer plantings of cool season crops matured during optimal fall conditions when pest pressure decreased and soil moisture was more reliable than during spring startup periods. Understanding local climate patterns allowed gardeners to time plantings for maximum success rather than following generic recommendations that might not fit specific regional conditions, creating productive gardens that worked with natural cycles rather than depending entirely on artificial protection systems. Watering for results. When it comes to watering, most people grab a hose and spray everything in sight, like they're washing a car. But Amish gardeners have figured out something that modern irrigation systems with their fancy timers and sprinkler heads seem to miss completely. The secret isn't about how much water you use, but how you use the water you have. Amish watering methods focus on deep, thorough soaking rather than frequent light sprinklings that barely wet the surface. They water less often, but give plants a real drink that reaches down to where the roots actually live. This approach encourages roots to grow deeper into the soil, creating stronger plants that can withstand drought conditions and don't need constant attention. Some people water their gardens like they're trying to give plants a light mist facial, while Amish gardeners provide the deep, satisfying drink that roots have been begging for. It's the difference between a quick splash and a proper bath. The timing and technique matter just as much as the amount. Amish women water only at the base of plants, keeping the leaves dry to prevent fungal diseases that thrive in moist conditions. They use watering cans or direct hoses to target the root zone specifically, avoiding the wasteful overhead spraying that gets more water on the ground than on the plants. One of the most ingenious Amish watering methods involves burying clay pots or old jugs with small holes near plant roots. These containers get filled with water and slowly release moisture directly into the soil over several days. This underground irrigation system ensures plants get consistent moisture without any evaporation loss, and it works even when the family is busy with other farm duties. The clay pots work especially well because they're porous and release water at exactly the rate that soil can absorb it, preventing both waterlogging and dry spells that can stress plants. Cutting back for growth. Winter pruning in Amish orchards transforms gnarled, overgrown trees into productive powerhouses that channel their energy into fruit production rather than excessive wood growth. The bare branches reveal the tree's true structure, making it easy to identify crossing limbs, dead wood, and shoots that compete with main branches for nutrients and sunlight. Dormant season cutting allows trees to heal properly before spring growth begins, sealing wounds naturally without the stress of active growing periods. Fruit trees pruned during winter dormancy respond by producing more flowering spurs and fewer water sprouts, concentrating their efforts on reproductive growth rather than vegetative expansion. Grapevines get similar treatment, with old canes removed to make room for young, productive wood that will carry the next season's crop. The timing matters as much as the technique. Pruning too early exposes cuts to winter damage, while waiting too late wastes energy that trees put into growth that gets immediately removed. Proper pruning actually extends tree life by preventing the structural problems that cause mature trees to split or collapse under heavy fruit loads. Well-pruned trees produce consistently for decades, while neglected ones often alternate between heavy and light crops, exhausting themselves with irregular production patterns. Watching plants closely. Daily garden walks through Amish growing areas might look like casual strolls, but they're actually systematic inspection tours where experienced eyes catch problems before they become serious. Yellowing leaves, wilting stems, and chewed foliage show up clearly to observers who know what healthy plants should look like at different growth stages. Early detection makes the difference between simple solutions and major crop losses. Aphid colonies spotted when they're still small clusters can be controlled with a spray from the garden hose, but the same pests allowed to establish large populations require more intensive treatments that may not be completely effective. Plant watching is like being a garden detective. You're always looking for clues that something's not quite right, except the criminals are usually small, green, and they multiply faster than rabbits in springtime. Preventive thinking guides these observation routines, with gardeners looking for conditions that favor problems rather than waiting for symptoms to appear. High humidity that encourages fungal diseases, drought stress that weakens plant defenses, and pest damage that creates entry points for secondary infections all get addressed before they cause visible damage. This proactive approach requires more daily attention than reactive problem solving, but it prevents the kind of catastrophic losses that can wipe out entire crops when conditions favor rapid disease or pest development. Old-fashioned plant fixes. Kitchen ingredients become powerful plant medicines in traditional Amish gardening systems where milk sprayed on leaves prevents powdery mildew and baking soda solutions control fungal problems without synthetic chemicals. These time-tested remedies work because they change leaf surface conditions in ways that make plant tissues inhospitable to disease organisms while remaining completely safe for human consumption. Vinegar traps catch fruit flies and other small flying pests using their attraction to fermentation odors, concentrating insects where they can be easily eliminated. Soap solutions disrupt insect feeding by coating pest bodies with slippery films that interfere with their ability to grip plant surfaces and pierce plant tissues for feeding. The beauty of these traditional treatments lies in their availability and low cost. Most households already have the ingredients needed to control common garden problems without special trips to agricultural supply stores. Milk costs less per gallon than most commercial fungicides and works just as effectively for many common diseases. These solutions break down quickly in the environment without building up toxic residues that could harm beneficial insects or contaminate soil and water systems around treated plants. While you're spending hundreds on fancy fertilizers and gadgets, the Amish are growing twice the food at a fraction of the cost using kitchen scraps and pocket change. These 20 deceptively simple techniques have been perfected over generations, and gardeners who discover them are kicking themselves for not knowing them sooner. Plant seeds. Point down. Have you ever planted a whole packet of seeds only to watch half of them fail to sprout? The solution might be simpler than you think. For generations, Amish farmers have been planting seeds with the pointed end facing downward. And there's good science behind this old-fashioned wisdom. When you place a seed point down in the soil, you're actually helping the young plant get a head start. Roots establish about 40% faster this way compared to seeds tossed in randomly. It's like giving your seeds a compass that points straight to where they need to go. Take common vegetables like beans, corn, and squash. These seeds naturally want to send roots downward and shoots upward. When you help them get oriented correctly from the start, germination rates jump up to 80% compared to random placement. That means more plants from the same number of seeds. something Amish gardeners have counted on for decades to maximize their harvests. Amish gardeners have passed down this wisdom for generations, recognizing that seeds naturally know which way to grow when properly oriented. The technique actually mimics how seeds fall in nature. Think about it. Most seeds aren't perfectly round. Their pointed ends often hit the ground first, positioning them naturally for optimal growth. The Amish didn't invent this method, they simply observed nature and followed its lead. In the future, you're planting larger seeds like beans, peas, corn, or pumpkins. Take the extra few seconds to point them downward. Your garden will thank you with faster germination and stronger plants. Some Amish gardeners even use a small stick to make the hole at the perfect angle for each seed. A bit time-consuming perhaps, but in gardening, patience at planting time often leads to better harvests later. Soak seeds in chamomile tea. The quiet wisdom of Amish gardening often comes from the kitchen as much as from the field. A cup of chamomile tea might be perfect for settling your nerves after a long day, but in Amish communities, this gentle brew pulls double duty as a powerful seed starter. Creating this natural seed booster couldn't be simpler. Just steep 2 chamomile tea bags in a cup of water for about 10 minutes until it's the color of honey, then let it cool completely. Larger seeds like tomatoes or pumpkins get a good long soak, about 12 hours, while smaller seeds like lettuce or carrots need only 6 hours in their chamomile bath. What makes this work so well? Chamomile contains natural compounds that fight fungus, protecting vulnerable seeds from the dreaded damping off disease that can wipe out entire seedling trays overnight. Amish gardeners have relied on this protection for generations, long before commercial seed treatments were available. Research backs up what the Amish have known all along. Seeds treated with chamomile tea germinate up to 3 days faster than untreated seeds. For folks who count every growing day as precious, those 3 days can make all the difference between a bountiful harvest and an early frost disaster. In Amish communities, there's a balance between respecting natural growing cycles and making the most of every precious day in the growing season. Historical records show chamomile has been used as plant medicine in Amish communities since they first settled in America. The tradition likely came over from Europe, where chamomile has been recognized for its medicinal properties for centuries. The next time you're starting seeds, skip the chemical treatments and brew up some chamomile tea instead. Your seeds will emerge stronger, faster, and better protected, just as they have in Amish gardens for hundreds of years. And if you have any tea left over, you might as well enjoy a cup yourself. After all, it's probably the only time your plants will thank you for steeping them in hot water. Copper pennies in flower pots. Did you know the change in your pocket could be the secret to healthier potted plants? Before filling your flower pots with soil, try dropping in a penny first. This isn't just any old garden superstition. It's a practice many Amish gardeners have relied on for decades. The trick works because of the copper content in older pennies. When you place a penny at the bottom of each pot before adding soil, it acts as a natural fungicide. The copper slowly releases ions into the soil that create an environment hostile to many fungal pathogens, but perfectly safe for your plants. Here's the catch. This only works with pennies minted before 1982. Those older coins contain about 95% copper, while newer ones are mostly zinc with just a thin copper coating. The difference matters because it's the copper that provides the fungus fighting power. The numbers speak for themselves. Garden tests show this simple trick reduces fungal problems by up to 65% compared to untreated pots. For the Amish, who prefer natural solutions over chemical treatments, this represents practical wisdom worth its weight in copper. Science explains that copper ions slowly leach into the soil over time, creating a protective barrier against damping off and other common container plant diseases. Just 1 penny can protect a standard-sized pot throughout the growing season. Going forward, you're setting up containers for your patio tomatoes or window herbs. Check the dates on your pennies. 1,981 penny might be the most valuable investment you'll make in your garden this year. And when fall cleanup comes around, you can collect those pennies to use again next season. A recycling program that's both economical and effective for any gardener. The only product we'll ever promote on our channel is a book by Claude Davis, a veteran prepper. about 126 superfoods and preservation methods from crisis times like the Great Depression and wartime that are impossible to find elsewhere. We decided to promote his book because we are the last generation able to share these techniques and superfoods to our children or grandchildren. It would be a shame to see this information about highly nutritious foods and preservation methods to survive crises disappear. You can also find a book about herbal remedies from Nicole Apelian on their store. If you're watching this on TV, you can look up our channel, Frugal Solutions, on your phone or tablet and find the books by clicking the link in our channel description or any other video description. Eggshells for tomato soil. The breakfast table and garden bed have more in common than you might think. Those eggshells from your morning omelet? They're garden gold for tomato plants, according to time-tested Amish growing practices. Starting with clean eggshells, the process is straightforward. Dry them in an oven at 200 degrees for about 10 minutes, then crush them into small pieces. For each tomato plant, mix a quarter cup of crushed shells directly into the planting hole before setting the seedling in place. The humble eggshell contains calcium carbonate, the same compound found in agricultural lime, but in a slowly releasing natural package. This calcium prevents blossom end rot, that disappointing black spot that can ruin the bottom of your tomatoes just as they're ripening. Research shows gardens using this method experience a 35% reduction in calcium deficiency symptoms compared to untreated plants. Many commercial farms spray chemical calcium solutions to address this problem, but Amish growers have found this kitchen waste solution works just as effectively. Beyond addressing calcium deficiency, eggshells gradually raise soil pH, creating the slightly acidic environment that tomato plants prefer. The beauty of this technique lies in its simplicity. While Amish communities embrace self-sufficiency by necessity, their methods often prove more effective than modern alternatives. The calcium in eggshells releases slowly throughout the growing season, providing a steady supply rather than the feast or famine approach of chemical fertilizers. Why throw away something valuable when it could be growing bigger, healthier tomatoes in your garden? Save those breakfast remains in a container by your sink. Turns out eggs aren't just good for your breakfast. They're good for your tomatoes' future too. Your summer sandwiches will thank you when they're piled high with perfect, rot-free tomato slices. Egg water for plants. Another time you boil eggs, don't pour that water down the drain. Amish gardeners have long saved this nutrient-rich liquid for their plants. It might seem too simple to be effective, but this recycled kitchen water contains valuable minerals that can boost plant growth. The process couldn't be easier. After boiling eggs, set the water aside and let it cool completely. Once it reaches room temperature, it's ready to nourish your garden. This technique works especially well for leafy greens like spinach and kale, along with calcium-loving vegetables such as peppers and broccoli. What makes egg water so special? During the boiling process, calcium and other minerals leach out of the eggshells and into the water. Plants absorb these nutrients directly through their roots, giving them a gentle but effective boost. Studies show that plants watered with cooled egg water can grow up to 15% faster than those given regular tap water. Laboratory analysis has revealed that egg water contains not just calcium, but also trace amounts of phosphorus and nitrogen, 3 essential nutrients that all plants need. It's like a mild, balanced fertilizer that costs absolutely nothing. Amish communities have always excelled at finding uses for items that might otherwise be wasted. Long before recycling became popular, these resourceful farmers were finding ways to close the loop between kitchen and garden. They understood that nutrients should cycle through the homestead rather than being washed away. To get the most benefit, use your egg water within a day or two of boiling. The nutrients remain stable at room temperature for a short time, but after that, they begin to break down. Just remember to let it cool completely. Hot water can shock plant roots and cause damage. With this simple trick, your breakfast preparation becomes the first step in nurturing your garden. 3 Sisters planting. Looking down from a hillside onto an Amish farm, you might notice a curious pattern in some of the garden plots. Instead of straight rows of single crops, certain areas feature small mounds where corn, beans, and squash grow together in a seemingly tangled but intentional arrangement. This is the 3 Sisters planting method, an indigenous growing technique that Amish farmers adopted generations ago. Each mound in this system measures about 18 inches across and 4 inches high. At the center grows corn, with bean seeds placed 4 inches away from the corn stalks. Squash seeds complete the trio, planted 12 inches from the center. What looks like a jumble to untrained eyes is actually a carefully engineered plant community where each member supports the others. The corn provides a natural trellis for the climbing beans. As the beans grow upward, they fix nitrogen from the air into the soil, feeding both themselves and their companion plants. Meanwhile, the broad squash leaves spread along the ground, creating living mulch that suppresses weeds and retains moisture. Their prickly stems also deter raccoons and other pests from approaching the corn. This growing method isn't just quaint or traditional, it's remarkably effective. Research shows that growing these 3 crops together increases overall yield by 30% compared to planting them separately. Plus, the system requires less watering and weeding, saving time and resources throughout the growing season. While this technique originated with Native American farmers thousands of years ago, Amish communities recognized its wisdom and incorporated it into their own gardens. The careful spacing between plants might seem fussy at first, but anyone can succeed with the Three Sisters method by following the basic measurements and allowing the plants to form their natural partnership. When harvest time arrives, you'll gather 3 crops from the same plot of ground, another example of the space efficiency that defines much of Amish gardening wisdom. Wool socks for containers. Waste not, want not. This principle guides many Amish practices, including what to do with old wool socks. When these socks develop holes beyond repair, they find new life in the garden as insulation for potted plants. Winter protection for container plants can be expensive, but this Amish trick costs nothing. Simply slip an old wool sock over smaller plant containers measuring 6 to 10 inches in diameter. The natural wool fibers create a protective layer that shields tender roots from temperature swings. Temperature measurements show this simple covering keeps the root zone 8 to 12 degrees warmer during cold snaps. For many plants, this can mean the difference between survival and freeze damage. The wool's natural insulating properties work even when wet, unlike many synthetic materials that lose effectiveness once damp. Container gardening presents special challenges since pots expose plant roots to colder temperatures than they would experience in the ground. Soil in containers can freeze solid in conditions where garden soil remains workable. The Amish recognized this problem long before container gardening became popular in urban settings. With this wool sock trick, gardeners can extend their growing season by up to 3 weeks in both spring and fall. This means earlier harvests of cool weather crops and longer production of fall vegetables. The method works best on medium-sized containers. For larger pots, you can use old wool sweaters or blankets cut to size. The key is using real wool, not synthetic fibers. While modern gardeners might purchase special frost blankets or insulating wraps, Amish gardeners simply repurpose what would otherwise be discarded. When spring arrives fully, these wool coverings can be removed, washed, and stored for the next season, or returned to the mending basket if they're still wearable after all. Hot pepper pest spray. The battle against garden pests takes a spicy turn in Amish communities where hot peppers become powerful plant protectors. Chemical pesticides find no place in traditional Amish gardens, but that doesn't mean these skilled growers leave their plants defenseless against insect invaders. Their homemade pepper spray recipe starts with 2 hot peppers. The hotter, the better. These join 2 cloves of garlic, 1 tablespoon of dish soap, and 1 quart of water in a blender. After blending thoroughly, the mixture steeps for 24 hours before being strained through a fine cloth. The resulting spray works because of 2 powerful compounds, capsaicin from the peppers and allicin from the garlic. Together, these natural chemicals repel and control soft-bodied insects like aphids, spider mites, and whiteflies, all without harming beneficial insects like bees and ladybugs that help pollinate plants and control pests naturally. Application timing matters in this Amish method. Early morning spraying allows the mixture to dry on plant leaves before the hot sun can intensify its effects. Care must be taken to avoid spraying blooms directly, as this could discourage pollinators from visiting. The effectiveness of this humble mixture might surprise many gardeners who have spent small fortunes on commercial organic sprays. The secret lies in the careful balance of ingredients. Too much soap can damage plant leaves, while too little won't help the spray stick to insects and plant surfaces. Amish gardeners have refined this recipe through generations of trial and error. One elderly gardener joked that he knew the spray was strong enough when it made his eyes water while mixing it. Though wearing gloves is definitely recommended unless you want to feel the burn when you rub your eyes later. The slight discomfort during preparation is well worth the chemical-free garden that results. Unlike commercial pesticides that can linger in the soil for years, this natural spray breaks down quickly and leaves no harmful residues on homegrown vegetables. It's yet another example of how Amish growing methods protect not just this year's garden, but the soil's health for generations to come. Plant by moon phases. Modern gardeners often consult weather forecasts and planting zone maps, but traditional Amish farmers look to something much older for guidance: the phases of the moon. This ancient practice isn't based on superstition, but on centuries of careful observation and recorded results. The basic principle divides plants into two main groups. Root crops like potatoes, carrots, and onions grow best when planted during the waning moon, the period after the full moon when moonlight decreases each night. Leafy vegetables and above-ground crops such as lettuce, spinach, and tomatoes thrive when planted during the waxing moon, the period after the new moon when moonlight increases nightly. What makes this method worth considering? Surprising research shows gardens planted according to lunar cycles can produce harvests up to 20% larger than those planted without regard to moon phases. These results have kept this practice alive in Amish communities, even as modern agricultural science has introduced many new growing methods. Following lunar planting doesn't require any special equipment or astronomical knowledge. A basic calendar that shows moon phases is all you need. The gravitational pull that causes ocean tides also affects the moisture in soil and seeds, though more subtly. During the waxing moon, rising moisture encourages seed germination and leaf growth. During the waning moon, receding moisture draws energy downward, benefiting root development. Historical documents show this practice appearing in Amish farming almanacs dating back to the 1800s. These carefully kept records tracked planting dates alongside moon phases and weather conditions, with harvest results noted months later. Through generations of these detailed observations, patterns emerged that helped refine the system we know today. While agricultural science hasn't fully embraced lunar planting, the consistent results seen in Amish communities suggest there's more to this ancient wisdom than meets the eye. The patient observation of natural cycles continues to guide their planting calendar, connecting their modern gardens to practices that stretch back thousands of years. Banana peels for roses. Before tossing banana peels into the trash, consider what Amish rose growers know. Those peels might be just what your roses need to thrive. This simple technique transforms everyday kitchen waste into powerful plant food. The method couldn't be more straightforward. Chop used banana peels into small pieces and bury them 2 to 3 inches deep around the base of rose bushes. For mature roses, apply 2 to 3 banana peels per bush each month during the growing season. Younger roses benefit from slightly less. About 1 peel per month is perfect. Science supports what Amish gardeners have observed in practice. Banana peels contain high levels of potassium, an essential nutrient that promotes flower production and strengthens stems. When roses receive adequate potassium, they produce more abundant blooms with stronger stems that better support heavy flowers. The impressive numbers tell the story. Gardens using this banana peel trick report up to 40% more blooms compared to unfertilized roses. Beyond just potassium, banana peels also provide trace minerals including magnesium, calcium, and sulfur, all important for overall plant health and disease resistance. Unlike commercial fertilizers that deliver nutrients all at once, banana peels break down slowly, releasing their beneficial compounds gradually over several weeks. This gentle, extended feeding matches how plants naturally absorb nutrients in the wild. The slow decomposition means less chance of fertilizer burn that can damage delicate rose roots. Amish gardening practices typically focus on using materials already at hand rather than purchasing special products. This banana peel technique perfectly exemplifies their waste-not approach to gardening. What most households throw away becomes a valuable resource that transforms garden health while reducing kitchen waste. Come summer, your roses won't be the only ones smiling. Your wallet will appreciate not buying expensive rose fertilizers, and those beautiful blooms will never reveal that their spectacular showing came from something as humble as breakfast leftovers. Harvesting and storing. Root cellars dug into hillsides or built below ground level maintain steady temperatures between 32 and 40 degrees throughout winter months, creating natural refrigeration that keeps root vegetables fresh for months without electricity. Proper ventilation prevents moisture buildup that causes spoilage, while darkness prevents sprouting that reduces storage quality. The Amish approach to food preservation begins immediately after harvest, with vegetables processed while they're at peak quality rather than after they've started to deteriorate. Canning, drying, and fermentation techniques capture nutrients and flavors at their highest levels, creating preserved foods that often taste better than fresh produce that's been stored improperly or transported long distances. Food storage in root cellars works like having a natural refrigerator that never breaks down, doesn't need repairs, and runs on the same energy source that keeps caves cool, which is to say, none at all. Nothing edible gets wasted in these efficient systems, with even vegetable peelings and trimmed portions going to compost piles or livestock feed rather than garbage bins. This comprehensive approach to food utilization means that gardens produce not just fresh vegetables for immediate consumption, but also preserved foods that provide nutrition throughout winter months when fresh production is impossible. The storage techniques themselves become part of the food production system, extending garden productivity far beyond the actual growing season. Gardening as a way of life. Garden work in Amish communities involves every family member, from children who can walk to grandparents who pass down generations of accumulated wisdom. This isn't just about producing food, it's about teaching responsibility, connecting with natural cycles, and maintaining cultural traditions that have sustained families through countless seasons of plenty and scarcity. Knowledge transfer happens naturally through shared work rather than formal instruction, with children learning by watching and gradually taking on more complex tasks as their skills develop. Seed-saving techniques, pest identification, and harvest timing become part of family heritage passed from generation to generation through hands-on experience rather than written manuals. The integration of gardening into daily life creates food security that extends far beyond individual growing seasons, with families maintaining seed stocks, preservation skills, and growing knowledge that can sustain them through economic hardships or supply disruptions. Gardens planned with both nutritional needs and cultural values in mind produce not just vegetables, but also the skills and traditions that ensure future generations can feed themselves regardless of external circumstances that might disrupt commercial food systems. A big harvest doesn't come from working harder. It comes from working smarter, like the Amish have done for generations. These simple tricks aren't just about growing more food, they're about building a garden that gets better with time.